Begin the current Daf Mesechtes Bava Metzia Daf begin 5 lines down at the top of the Yamid. We continue our look at the next Mishnah, continuing the theme of these series of Mishnayos, discussing, of course, the theme of this parak of Aserchas Hapoilim, hiring the workers, which specifically, we spoke about when you hire workers, there's an obligation to feed them, but that was from Miniga Medina, and then if Pesach, if you made it with them, but then we said there's Eichel Min HaTorah. There's halacha the Torah that says Kisav B'Kerem Re'echa. There's halacha that you have to let the worker eat. Our Mishnah further qualifies this halacha about what the possible limitations of this halacha in the Torah is. And throughout the entire world. So I'm discussing today's daf this halacha that a worker could eat. Question is, as the Mishnah discusses, could he consume more than the work he's actually even doing, because he has the right to eat? What happens if there's one cluster of grapes? He's working on that. Could he eat up that one cluster of grapes? Bias kol adam, the idea that any single person could enter into a field and eat the produce, and because of the work that he's doing, even though he wasn't hired. What's Allah if the worker says, hey, you know what, I'm not going to eat this, give it to my wife? Does he have a right to do that? Kaitis Adam, regarding making up with beforehand about that you don't want the ability to eat it, and what's with if he does it with his children, with his slaves, adults, minors, and this becomes a part of the discussion about when the worker is eating. Is he eating from his own? Is it really that like money that he owns? Or is it like a gift that he gets from heaven and it's not really his? And hence, therefore, he would not be able to give that rights over to someone else. Some of the other important terms of the concepts is the master allowed to tell his slave, hey, bud, you work for me, but I'm not going to feed you, which that will relate to that discussion regarding could he limit the slave's eating of the work that he's doing. A parenthetical but comes up regarding the when does wine become established that it's mechuyev meiser. Either it's possibly mishikafa, which is when you remove the sediments from the pit, or mishiyashala, which is a later stage, which is when you remove the pit and the other stuff when it's in the barrel and after fermented, and then you have the scum that you take off. That's the conversation exactly when does it become mechuyev and meiser. So begin the current daf that Tzadi Beis, 5 lines down at the top of the Yamid, where the Mishnah said, Eichel Payil Kishas. A worker could eat cucumbers, a fila, even if it's worth bedinner, even if it's worth far more than his wages. So to Keseves, he could eat a date, a fila bedinner, even if he's getting hired for a dinner. He can consume. I mean, even if it's worth a dinner, even if it's worth more than what he was hired to do. That's the opinion of the Tanna Kama. But Lazachis Maimer says, no, lo yichel payil yesascha, right? A worker cannot consume produce worth more than his wages itself, which the Gemara is going to learn out later on from kenafshecha. The words in the pasuk says, what does it mean kenafshecha? Like your life. What does your life have to do? It means really how much your schiras, how much your wages are, meaning that your moiser nefesh to go onto the tree or in a dangerous place to make the money, that how much your wages is, that's how much you could eat. But more than your wages itself, that you're not allowed to go ahead and consume. That's the second opinion. The third opinion, they permit, which the Gemara is going to ask, that seemingly is the same thing as the Tanna Kama, who permits you to eat more than what you're making. And then the Mishnah concludes, but we teach the person, don't be a glutton, because then he's going to close the doors of opportunity, of job opportunities in front of him, because no one's going to want to hire him, because this guy makes $10 for you and he eats up $20. So he works in the canteen and he's stuffing all those francs down and all the pizzas, and he made you $30, but he ate up $50 worth. It's just not worth it. So even though it's permitted, however, we try to tell the guy that it's not a good idea. Now, the Gemara asked the obvious question, Chacham hainu Tanna Kama. The Chachamim is the same thing as Tanna Kama, that you're allowed to eat more than the value of your wages. So says the Gemara, the difference between them is this avul malamdin, that we teach him, that we tell him what's the appropriate conduct that's going to get him somewhere in life. Latana kama les lemalamna. He doesn't have this concept of that we teach him. He doesn't say. He just says he's allowed to eat, even if it's worth a dinner more than he's making. But l'rabbanan is lemalamna, meaning the seif of the Mishnah was the opinion of the Chachamim. It said the avu malamna is the Chachamim. They say yes, we agree that it's permitted, but we tell him, we sit him down, we give him the talk. We say, buddy, this is not a good idea. That's one shot. That's the difference between them. If you want, you could say the difference between them is the Ravasi, which is the Ravasi. Ravasi says, even if you hired him only to harvest one cluster of grapes, he could eat that cluster that he was hired to harvest. So that's what Ravasi says. So how is this the machlekes in our Mishnah? So Rashi explains. The Tanakama holds a Ravasi. And this is what the Tanakama was saying. Poyol oichol kishais, the worker could eat cucumber, meaning even if it's the only thing and there's nothing else, even if it's worth a dinner, even if it's worth more, and it's the only thing he's harvesting. On that, Rabbi Lazar comes to say the middle opinion. He says, no, whether it's the only thing, whether he hired him for this cluster and other clusters, if it's worth more than his wages, he's not allowed to eat it. On that, the third opinion, Rabbanim Basroi, the Chum, they come to say, look, yes, if it's more than his wages, he's allowed to eat if he's a shiur, if he's hired as a day laborer. But if you hired him just for this one cucumber, no, then you can't eat that, because the Chachamim do not hold like Ravasi. That's the second interpretation in the Machlekes Tanakam Chacham. If you hold of Ravasi's Chiddush, that not only is it worth more than what you're hiring, it's the only thing you were hired to do, and you could eat up that one thing. The guy hired you to pick one grape, one cluster of grapes, and you eat up that cluster. The Torah says you're allowed to eat. Even that's the one thing. That's the machlekes between them. Now, the Ravasi. Now the Gemara quotes another chiddush from Ravasi that we just mentioned. If a guy was hired for the entire day, afilu loibatzer ela eshkol echad, then even if he has only harvested one cluster, he's allowed to eat it, meaning the first cluster that he has harvested, he's allowed to eat that one. So they're very similar teachings. And the Gemara is going to say, Utsricha, why do you need to say both of them? So the Gemara says, I'll tell you why. The Iyashmin on HaKamai said, I only told you the first teaching, that if there's only one cluster, he's allowed to eat it up. Yeah, meaning that there's nothing that he could put into the vessel of the balabayas to tell him, well, first put in and then eat. Because if he's going to put in, then he's not going to eat. But the Torah permits him to eat. So I would say, okay, that's why when there's only one cluster, we let you eat it, because then there's nothing here anymore that you can't put in that you're going to eat. But maybe when there is what you could put into the vessel of the homeowner and still have what to eat, okay, I would say, you got to first put in, do your job, and then you could eat. But to eat and then then do your job, I would say maybe not. That's why you need to have the second chiddush of Ravasi that says, yeah, even if it's the first one, you could eat the first one that you're working on. Now, v'yeshmin baha, had we only said the second chiddush, the one that you could eat the first cluster you're working with, because the efshel akumul b'saif, because it's possible to fulfill your obligation of the owner's job after you eat. But when it's not possible to fulfill it at the end because there's only one cluster and you're eating that one up, I would say then maybe the Torah doesn't give you the rights to eat unless you actually put something into the Keleb Shabalabayis. Therefore, we needed to have both teachings of Ravasi because each one has a chiddush you would not have known from the other one. Okay, that was parenthetical because we just put in Ravasi to say the machlekes between the Tanakhama and the Chacham is in this chiddush of Ravasi of his first teaching. Now, the Gemara goes for another approach. If you want, you could say that the difference between the Tanakhama and the Chacham, which both seem to be saying the same thing, that the worker could eat more than his wages, the difference between them is the teaching of the Rav, which is, Rav said, Matzasi Megillah Sesarim. He says, I found a hidden scroll, Bei Reb Chia, in the house on the yeshiva of Reb Chia, because it was forbidden in those days to write down halachas, like the Gemara says, Tmur Daf Yudalid, and because Torah Shabbat was not permitted to be written down. But when he would hear a chiddush and was afraid to forget it, he would write it down, he would hide it, that no one would see it. Now, says Rav, I found this hidden scroll because when it was written in it the following teaching. Isi ben Yehuda Imri says, the pasuk says in Devarim, Kisave bekem re'acha, that when you're going to enter into your friend's vineyard, that's what the pasuk says, that you could eat to your heart's content, and but just don't put it into your bowls. Says Isi, it's bebis kol adam because medaba. The pasuk is talking about anybody, which is simply the simple translation of the pasuk is like that. Anybody the pasuk is talking about, even if it's not the guy who's hired to work, any guy could come into the friend's vineyard and eat to his heart's desire. That's what the teaching said. Rav said when he found this hidden scroll, which was obviously a chiddush even to Rabbi Chia, and that's Rabbi Chia wrote it down and hid it. He says, Isi is not going to let anybody live. It's like Shemitah, ganz year Shemitah, like every year Shemitah. Like, what? How could someone just come into your vineyard and start eating? Yeah, he can't do cash and carry, but he could eat whatever his heart's desire. So on that, Rabbi Ashi said, says, I said this teaching which Rav had found, and Rav was wondering how is it possible such a thing, and I said it over in front of Rav Kahana, and he said, no, Dilma ba'isen besudasan. Maybe it means guys who are going to do for their meal the avdu va'achlu, meaning yes, whoever wants to come and can't just eat, whoever wants to could work, harvest, and as they're working, eat, even though he wasn't hired. Doesn't mean any guy could just come in and eat. You're right. No one's going to be able to survive. Everyone's going to come and just, take handouts. It means that to come in and work. And Amali said to me, even so, it's still something that's intolerable. Because a person would prefer to hire workers, that they should go ahead and harvest his orchard, and not let everybody come and do what they want to do and eat as they're doing what they're doing. That was this teaching.
Why the pasuk sounds grammatically like it's when you're found there.
Kisavim means
not that you go there.
Well, tava is like the word be of coming. Well, tava is coming in. Kisava, when you're going to come into B'Kamri Echa, it sounds like right. It sounds like whoever. It sounds like exactly. That's what it sounds like. Whoever. But we already taught in the previous Daf a Gzera Shava to show that it's told by a worker. That right, exactly.
But this don't about anybody.
Exactly. This was a different teaching.
So what is the meaning if not literal?
If it's not literal, there's a Gzera Shava that says that we learn that it's referring to that we said there's another pasuk that says also bia, and there was referring to a pile to a worker. So we said here also it's referring to a worker. But this teaching obviously does not have that tradition. And he says, no, it doesn't mean just anybody, it means a guy who's going to do work, but even so, I don't want a guy just doing the work on his own. That was the teaching. So as Rashi explains, that this is the Machlekes Tanakama and the Chachamim. The Tanakama did not hold like Isi's teaching. Because if you look at the words the Tanakama said, his words were explicitly, Oichel Poyel Kishas. He's talking about a Poyel, a worker that you hired. So that's not like Isi. Isi said, no, you don't have to be a worker. You could come in and you could work on your own and take food as you're doing. Rabban and Basroi, the Chachamim, they hold like Isi. And that's what the words of Chacham in the Mishnah are. Chachamim atirim, they permit what? That you could eat more than your, like they were disagreeing with Rabbi Lazar Chisma, that you could eat yesal schare, more than your wages. Because even if you're not even a hired laborer, you're allowed to eat. So therefore, that was the third interpretation about what's the machlekes between the Tanakama and the Chacham. Now, the Gemara introduces the following question. Ibailuhu. They wanted to know, Payil, regarding a worker, Mishalehu Oichel, and the Gemara is going to relate this back to the discussion we were having just before. Does a worker eat from his own? In other words, is it additional wages that the Torah gives him, and therefore that's why he could eat whatever he's eating from, but it's his own money? Or is he eating from heaven? Meaning, is it like a gift of kindness, of charity, like other gifts that are given to the poor, which is not your money? Hashem just lets you eat it. That's the question. How do you qualify this halacha in the Torah the worker gets to eat what he's working on. Says Gemara, Lamai nafkamina. What's the difference? Who cares if it's mil shaloy or mishal shemayim? Says, I'll tell you the difference. If he says to nu, he says, give my rights to eat leishti ubanai, to my wife and to my kids, as the Gemara explains. If you say mishaloy oichel, that he eats from his own, it's his own wages that the Torah is adding on. So we would give it to them. Because just like he has the ability to give his wages to whoever he wants to, he could give over the rights of his eating to whoever he wants to. But if you say that it's from heaven that he's eating, so then it's only to him that the Torah gave him the rights with like charity. But as long as it doesn't come to him, he can't go ahead and give over the rights to his wife or to his kids. So the Torah never gave the rights to his wife or to his kids. So what would you say? What's the halacha? Could he give it over to his kids because mishaloi and his wife, or do you say that he cannot because mishal shemayim hu eichel? Someone says Tashmat's being a raya from our Mishnah. What's the raya? The Mishnah said, the Tanakhama said, eichel poil kishus. A worker could eat cucumbers, dinner, even if it's worth way more than his wages, worth a dinner. Or kasevas, he could eat a date that has high quality vegetable that's so expensive that he's working on, dinner, even if it's worth a dinner. Now, says the Gemara, if you say mishaloi hu oichel, that it's his own, it's like added wages that he's consuming from his own. So I don't understand. Oiger bedanka, he hires him for a small amount of money. Is he doing some basic labor? Achel bezuzah, he could eat a zuz. What you think that the additional is more than the principal? Like this added that the Torah is adding on this benefits that he gets is going to be way more than the actual, job that he's doing. So it wouldn't make sense that it's mishalahu oichel, because how else would you be able to get so much more from this benefit? So the Elamai says, wait, what do you want to say? Mishal shemayim oichel, that he's eating from heaven? But so at the end of the day, oiger bedan ka'achel bazuzah. The same question you could ask him mishal shemayim. How could heaven be giving him such a gift that you're doing a job worth $5 and you tell the cleaning lady, "Hey, I'm so happy with the job you did today. Here's a $500 check." What do you do? How would that make sense? Even if it's not, even if it's matanas gemilas chasadim, like Rash says, mishal shemayim. How would that make sense? What do you have to say? Yeah, the Torah is giving him that right. So there's no right. Here also you could say that the Torah is also giving him this profit that added to his wages. So either way, it wouldn't make sense one way more than the other. If based on this question about how could the addition be more than the primary? That's obviously either way you're gonna have to say that. So Gemara says, okay, Toshma, we can't bring a raya from the Tanakhama. Let's bring a raya from the next Tana of our Mishnah, from Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar Chisma Omer, he says, no, you cannot. The worker cannot eat more than his wages, and Chacham say it's permitted. Says the Gemara, isn't this the point that they're disagreeing about? Which is the Marsa of Rabbi Elazar Chisma held mishalahu oichel. The guy's eating from his own. Oh, so therefore, of course, you can't eat more than your wages because the addition cannot be more than the principal. The whole thing is because it's a wages thing. So you're not going to eat more than what your actual wages is. But a Marsa of Chacham held, no, mishal shemayim oichel. You're eating from heaven, and the Torah gives you rights, and therefore you could eat as much as your heart's desire. Isn't this the machlekes of the Tanoim? Says Gemara, no, not necessarily. The Kulam, I can tell you, everyone holds mishalahu oichel, that he's eating from his own. So based on that, we would think, okay, we said that would sound like the opinion would hold that he should be limited to how much he's making. No, because their machlekes is when the pasuk says as much as you want. How do you translate the word kenafshecha? Maris of Rabbi Elazar Chisma, who said you're limited to how much your wages are, you can't eat more than your wages. He translates kenafshecha means bedaber shemasar nafshe alav, like something that you're giving up your life, because when people would work, they would go up on ramps and climb up on trees where he's moist and nefesh that he might die. That's really what his wages are. The pasuk is telling you it's only kenafshecha. It's like your soul. It's almost how much money you're earning, which is how much of your soul you're willing to risk. That's how much you could eat. So the pasuk is telling you that you're limited. And Tosh discusses why we're saying that this is mishalayhu oichel. He says, yeah, just as well, it really could be mishal shemayim also oichel. It's not really dependent on that. It's just dependent on how you translate kenafshecha. You could hold either way. But be that as it may, but the Chachamim held a different drush in the word nafshecha. So then you're not stuck with any limits on how much you're allowed to eat, because the pasuk is not limiting it. So then, whichever one, you could eat as much as your heart's content, even more than what your wages.
Is it spontaneous as he's working, eating?
Yeah.
Or is it, can he pack it up for later?
No, right. No, so the pasuk explicitly says it cannot. El keli chalaisita, and you're not allowed to pack it up. It's only as he's eating, but hashavas aved, we said he could eat from row to row, but it's only as he's working. But the point that the Gemara is making over here is that the word kenavshecha, the Chacham used for something else, to teach you something else. Manavshecha, just like yourself, when they're saying the worker could eat kinavshecha, they're learning that it's going on the employer. Just like yourself, if you muzzle yourself. That's a great diet idea. When you're working, you muzzle yourself, that you're going to be potter, that you could do that. Just saying a worker also, if you muzzle him, that you're going to be potter, in contrast to, like we said, regarding an animal, that Torah explicitly says that but it work. Right, so we said only when it's there's mechuber and there's by talish, and we said that it's only. So, right, so we said not then, right, exactly. We said depends, it has to be by gemar malacha, but it can't be by talish, it can't be that it's already was nigma malachta lamaisa or lachala. There are limitations on that. It has to be similar to the what the pasuk there is talking about. When you're putting it into the kalim, that means you're finishing the job right now. So again, there was two different interpretations in this machlokes of the that we have in our Mishnah. So the Gemara says Tashema. So we're still by the question over here that the Gemara wants to know: is it mishalayhu oichel or is it mishal shemaim oichel? Let's bring it right from a brisa. Brisa says regarding a nazir. Now we know a nazir is forbidden to eat grapes. So he's working on the vineyard. So Shami says, Tanu, the gear says, Ishti ubanai, whatever, Ishti ubanav. He says, give it to my wife and to my kids. In Shem, we don't listen to him. Okay. Says the Gemara, I have a raya over here. What's the raya? If you think that this permission of eating, this a benefit, is his own wages, why wouldn't you listen to him? Of course you should let his wife and kids eat it. Obviously, you see Mishal Shemayim, and it's only his when he's chewing on it. Says he want to know. That's a different reason. Amrin Nizira. We tell the Nazir, go. Schar, go around. Lekamali Sikrev. Don't come near to the vineyard. In other words, it's a penalty that we penalize him, that you shouldn't be working on the vineyard. You don't get to take an addict and put him into that wherever his people places things where he's going to be taken down. So that's why we don't let his wife and kids. But it could be if it's a regular worker, maybe we would say Mishalayhu Oichel, and that he would be allowed to give it to his wife and kids. This one says, okay, Tashma, I'll try to bring another raya. The Brisa says, if you have a worker that says, look, I'm not eating today, I'm on a diet, I'm doing keto, whatever this and that, I'm working here on the fields, do me a favor, let my wife and kids eat what I would have eaten. Says the Brisa, ain't Shem, that we don't listen to him. Again, if you say Mishalayhu Oichel, but that it's his own wages, why don't you listen to him? Obviously, it's Mishal Shemayim Oichel. Says he, no, my pile. What does this Brisa mean when it says a worker? It means a nazir. Says he, what do you mean? Batanya nazir, Batanya pile. But we already said a Brisa of a nazir, and now you're saying pile. Obviously, pile the worker is a regular worker, not a nazir. Says he, no. Midi Gabi Adodi Tanya. You think these Brises were taught near each other? It's the same idea. Just one Tana said the word pile, but he meant nazir, and it could have been two Tanaim saying the same idea, and therefore it's not necessarily a raya. So he says, okay, Tashma, I'll try to bring another raya. The Brisa says, Minayin lepoil. Where do we know regarding a worker? Sha'ama that he says to Nula Ishti Abandi, he says, do me a favor, give the food to my wife, to my kids. Ain't Shayin Shamala, we don't listen to him. Because it says the pasuk in Devarim. It says, Bel Kel Yichol Sitin. It says this pasuk, it said when you come into your friend's vineyard, you can eat to your heart's content. And it says, but to your vessels you should not put it in. So you see that it's only what you're eating. You can't put it into bags. You can't take those Costco bags, and they don't have. But whatever, you can't take it back with you and take it home to give it to your wife and to your kids. Okay, but it says, so you see clearly that he can't give it to his wife and kids again, which would seem to be a raya that Mishal Shamayim Hu Eichel, because Mishal he should be allowed to. It says we can say no, it's not a raya again. Because when we say a worker, we mean a nazir. But then the question is, Mishum el kel yichol sitain? Then it's not because of to your vet to like you're now put into your own bags to take it home to your wife and kids. Say, look what I brought home from work today. Mishum lech lechamin naziruhu. It should have said because we tell the nazir, hey, you shouldn't be working over here, and we're going to penalize you. We're not going to let you have this option of like taking it home for your wife and kids. So again, it seems to be a clear right that it's not talking about a nazir and talking about every regular worker. A regular worker is not allowed to go ahead and take it home and give it to his wife and kids because mishal shemayim oichel. So Gemara says in the Chanam, you're right that the v'aidi diktani law b'loshen payil. The truth is, it is a nazir, and it should have said because we tell the nazir you got to get out of here. We're not going to give you these options. But since we use the terminology of a worker, as we saw the other brisa also use the terminology of worker, but it meant a nazir. So kanas of law, so the brisa brings kra the payil, a pasuk of a worker. But the truth is, it's really rabbinic, as we said, because he's a nazir. And the pasuk is nasmach ba'alma. It's just alluding to the idea that we don't let you take it to your wife and your kids, but really could be it's only by a nazir and because of this penalty. So again, we still don't have a raya. Someone says, okay, Tashma, trying to bring a raya from Mishnah Masechtas Maisers. What? Oh, yeah. Shouldn't have been hired, exactly. But well, that could be, but the point is, even if he hired him, it's not like he's not allowed to. But the rabbis are going to penalize him. He's not going to. No. Yeah. Well, I don't know. There's nothing wrong with actually. Rabbinically, we said in the Minat Torah you're allowed to be near wine and you're allowed to be there. It's just the rabbanim say that stay, harchik, they make gedarim. So they. Oh, mainly it's for for dietary reasons. Yeah. Oh, the owner wants him over there. Oh, okay. I got you. Okay, yeah. So now the Gemara says, okay, let's try and bring a raya from Mishnah Masechtas Maisers. The Mishnah says that haseches hapoilim lakatzes patein. Someone hires a worker to make katsiyos. What's katsiyos? Katsiyos, they would take these figs and they would dry it out in the fields. So the continue to base, the halacha is a oichel. The worker could eat from it, and upatim in the meiser, and is exempt from taking meiser because which is interesting, and today's discusses this, because since it's going to still be dried out, even though generally after it's harvested it's already done, but here since it's going to be dried out, it's not nigma malachta because you're still going to dry it out. So today's on the bottom of Amid Aleph says, I don't understand. If the guy would have wanted to eat it like this without drying it out, it would have been nigma malachta. So it wouldn't be included in bedishay. So because he's thinking that he still wants to dry it up, it's included in da'ish that it's like not nigma malachta. So therefore, it's still like when you're finishing the process that you could let the worker eat. So Tais says, yeah, because either here's talking about the place where the minig was that everyone would dry it out. So even without a machshava, it's like stomach. We assume that's not nigma malachta l'maiser. Or additionally says that the halacha is that the worker could eat because of the machshava of his employer, because since through this machshava it's considered not nigma malachta regarding that you could eat and your pater of ma'aser is not nigma malachta l'maiser yet. That's the same reason why the worker could eat, even though technically if you didn't have the machshava, it would already be nigma malachta, it would already be mechuyev ma'aser, and the worker would not be able to eat. Yes, but now the employer still wants to finish the process, even if he just thought that would be enough to allow the worker to eat. Akapanim continues the Mishnah. But let's say the worker says, Amanasha oichel ani ubani. Before he takes the job, he says, look, I'm willing to do this job for you, but only in the condition that me and my son, who is not working, he's not employed by the balabais, on the condition that me and my son could eat, or he says no. He says, I'm making up with you that my son could eat for my wages. So who oichel pater? So the father could eat and be pater because the Torah gives him the right, like lekachich and peya, which is like matnas aniyim, where are pater from meiser. So too is the worker himself could eat and be exempt. Now his son could eat because that's what he made up with him. But v'chayiv, if the son eats, he's actually chayiv and meiser what he's eating, because as Rashi explains, it's like purchasing something that even though it's not nigma malachta, we already said in the previous daf, the actual mekach itself is like a kviyas, and therefore that would be mechayiv and meiser. Okay, so what do you want from this Mishnah? It says more like this: the Amr, if you're going to say Mishalehu Eichel, that the father, these extra profits, extra benefits that the Torah gives him that he could eat, is his own wages, and it's part of his schar, part of his scharoi. So, and even so, the Torah exempts him from the word mikanavshecha, that we darshan manavshecha, just like you yourself, the employee, if you eat, you're part of a meiser. So to the worker, if he eats, he's going to be part of a meiser. And as we see the worker, the father himself, when he works, he's part of a meiser, even though, if you say Mishalehu Eichel, it's part of his wages. So b'nai chayiv. Then why is the son chayiv when he is eating it, but he's eating it in the wages of his father? So he's eating just like his father. His father, it's also part of his wages. So the son is also not part of the wages because that was what the contract they made up. So then, if the Torah is exempting, even though it's part of the wages, so the son should also be pater. So Mavina says, you're right, but Mishum de Mechzik Mekach. It looks like a sale. Because since he stipulated beforehand, so that gives the appearance, and therefore, that's why the son would have to take a meiser. But as Rashi explains, but the father himself, his own eating, which does not require stipulation, because even though it's part of his wages, it's still not similar to a mekach in regards to what he's eating, because the Torah gives him the right. And therefore, that's why the father wouldn't have to separate meiser. But again, it wouldn't be a raya to say that must be mishal shemayim ho'echel. Right, so that depends. That we spoke about in the previous stuff. This machlekes regarding when do we say, is it only when you go into the house, or going to the chutzner, or even earlier? Depends for what. Right, so I'm saying, but even if it's not nig malach l'maisa, let's say we need to go into the house. But when you purchase something, the purchase makes it a kavua. So the Gemara says, Tashma, I'll try to bring a raya from Mishnah on the next daf, and Tzadi Gimel Aleph. The Mishnah says, if someone hires a worker, last is b'netter avai shalei. Netter avai is halacha that after the first 3 years, that which are the fruit is prohibited the first 3 years of a fruit tree. The 4th year is kodesh hilulam Hashem, which means to say it has the halacha like meiser sheni. So the halacha is hardei elu lo yoichlu. So these workers cannot eat from the fruits of the tree of the 4th year because it needs to be within the walls of Yerushalayim. Which you learn out of kodesh from meiser. Now, in the beginning, he hired him with this intention of, I want you to know, it's an eter avai. So he can't eat from it because it's aser. It's like it has to be taken to Yerushalayim. Now, if he didn't originally let them know that the tree they're working on is neter avai, is the 4th year fruits, so then paydim achilan. The owner has obligation to redeem it, which you could do like meiser sheni, and then feed them the fruits. Okay, that's what the Mishnah says. Says the Gemara, if you say that the worker is eating from a gift from heaven, why does the owner have to redeem it and then the employer have to redeem it and then feed it to his worker? The Torah never gave a gift. It's prohibited. If you say it's mishaloi, it's wages, okay, so it's prohibited, but it's his wages, so you have to redeem it. But why would you have to do this? Says the Gemara, that's because it just looks like a mistaken acquisition. Meaning, had you let him know, he wouldn't have worked for you. What are you crazy? This is one of the big benefits that you could be eating as you're working. The guy didn't know that, and now he suddenly you dropped something and said, "By the way, today you're working on Netter Avai." So what do you mean, all day I can't eat? So it looks like a mekatois. It's not really mekatois. It looks like so. Therefore, it says that's why the halacha would be that the employer would have to redeem it and feed it to him. The Gemara says, "Aim a seifa," but look at the seifa of the Mishnah. Seifa of the Mishnah says they would have these dried figs that they would press into these round cakes, and that's already when it's finished its process to be chayv and meiser. What happens if it fell apart and the sparsu agulov, and now the whole cake got separated, and now he has to hire a guy to repress it to put it back again. So in that the Mishnah says, as we'll see in the next daf, it says Harei elu lo yoichlu. They're not allowed to eat from it because a worker cannot eat from something that is already nigim malach delamais, as we taught in the Bryce and the Peitas, that it excludes haboidel by tomorrow. If something's already after those stages, you have no right to eat from it. It's already nigim lamais. So too, if let's say if nitpatchu chabiyasav, a person's barrels opened up and the covers were taken off, and he wants to hire someone to reseal it. They're not allowed to eat from, not allowed to drink from this wine because it was already nigman lamachta lemaisa from already beforehand when they sealed it originally. Now that the cover came off, you just have to seal it again. You have no rights to eat from it. But vimlo hidion, if he didn't let them know, which the Gemara later is going to ask, by the case of barrels, what should he have let him know? That would seemingly anyways be after the stages, even if it's the first time sealing it. But be that as it may, if he didn't let them know, then he has to take off meiser, because it's already mechuyev meiser, already gila meiser, and then he has to let them eat, because again, they didn't know about this, and they thought they're going to be doing work today when they're pressing the cakes of figs, and they're going to be eating as they're working, and they can't because it already had been done, it just fell apart. So you got to feed them. Says the Gemara, now if you say that the rights of eating these benefits is only a gift from heaven, again, similar to the question the right we had just from the previous right, why does the employer have to take off ma'aser and feed it to his employees? The Torah didn't give any permission to eat something prohibited. This is already mechuyev ma'aser. It's not including the gifts. Now, we can say like we answered before, it's only because it looks like a mistaken acquisition. The guy didn't know, and now he's stuck. That's only good for one of the two cases. Bishlam and the I understand regarding when the cake got separated of the dried figs. Mexican that looks like a mistaken acquisition because when he originally told him, he says, put in the classified. He said, I need a guy to press my cake of dried figs. So he thought this was the beginning when they're pressing it. That wasn't Migmalachta yet. Migmalachta is only when they finished pressing it together. Now he finds out that no, already was pressed, it fell apart, and now it's already too late. Okay, that's a mekach tais. But regarding the barrels having been opened, what type of mistaken acquisition is over there? Made the other, the itfalula meiser, that it's already untyped and that's obligated meiser, because the moment it goes into the pit, forget about the barrel, it's already considered wine that's mechuyev meiser. So even if this was the first time around, where's the mekach tois? Why do you have to be ma'aser and let him eat? Some Rav Sheshitz, he says, no, the case is not so simple. It's not just nispatchu. It didn't just open. It's nispatchu chabiyosav lebar. What happened was that the barrel opened up and spilled into the pit. They thought that it was never taken out from there, from when it went from the press into the pit that's nearby. So that they were being hired to put it into the barrel. Oh, that's not yet mechuyev meiser. So that's why it was like Mexican mechatoy. So I think, well, really? By the time we learned the brayso yain mishiur lebar, we said that wine, the moment it goes into the pit, it's already considered it's finished to be mechuyev meiser, and it's in the pit. So even if it's in the pit, it's mechuyev meiser. Where's the mechatoy over here? Says the Gemara Rabbi Kiva. This is going like Rabbi Kiva's teaching. The Amar that he says mishi kafa. He says that it's from when the sediments, the pits, the peels, when they float to the top of the pit, when it starts to ferment, and they take away the peels and they throw it away, that is when you're going to be mechuyev in meiser. And that's what the Amr they said to him, and we didn't know that it already was mekapi, that it already was, the scum was already taken off the top of the pit. No, but they were hired to do they only find out when they come now. They were hired to do this. No, they were asked to bring out the not to do the job of the scum. They were asked to bring the wine into the barrels, and right, but they weren't there. They were hired in the shtibel by the mikveh. They were asked to come and do the job. I need you guys to go take my wine and put it into my barrels. So saying even if it's our first time around, already it's in the pit, it's already mechuyev ma'aser. It's not true. Like Rabbi Kiva, just being in the pit is not mechuyev ma'aser. It's only after Mishi Kappa. Says the Gemara, but why doesn't he tell them? You guys should have entertained the moment I told you guys I'm hiring you to draw it from the pit. Maybe it was already, the scum was taken off. And since you guys didn't entertain, okay, you guys agreed and you accepted. Why is it my responsibility to be like, so to speak, this mekach tois? Says Gemara, no, because ba'asr, we're talking about in a place that who gathered the nugget, that the whoever it is that draws it from the pit, which is what they were hired to do, ihu makapa. The custom is that they're the ones who take off the scum. So there's no reason for them to have thought that was done. So therefore, again, that would be this mekach tois. They thought exactly. It's a different meaning. It was not mechuyev ma'aseh yet, so they thought they're going to be getting some good cups of wine before it's they finish their job. So, but it says the Gemara, now that Rav Zvid taught in the Brayso B'Shir Reb Hoshia, Yayin the halacha is mechuyev ma'aseh mishiyur l'bar b'yakab, but actually the Tanakama, Chama the ones who hold it's only when it goes into the pit and the scum is taken off. Whereas Rabbi Kiva actually says a later stage. It's actually only once you put the wine from the pit into barrels, and then it ferments, and then it causes the bubbles to go up, and some of the sediments bubble to the top. And before you seal the barrel is when you take off from the bubbles, from the scum, and you throw it out. Only then are you mechuyev ma'aseh. So now you could even say, not like we originally had to answer. Because remember, the Mishnah really says when the barrels open up. So it does. We said, open up and it spilled out into the pit. No, you could even say it didn't open up and spill into a pit. It could just mean that the barrel opened up. The Amrulay, but they could still tell him, we didn't know that this was already the scum of the barrel taken out and thrown out. We thought that this is the first time that you're sealing it. Says Gemara, but what do you mean? Why can't he tell them? Even if it's the first time around, why didn't you guys entertain? Then maybe I took off this scum and I'm hiring you to seal it. Because we're talking about where whoever it is, the one that's hired to seal the barrel, he's the one that takes off the scum. And therefore the workers say, why should we think? And therefore we thought it wasn't mechuyev ma'aseh. Therefore he has to be ma'aser and feed them. Okay, so we didn't bring a raya from this either. Moses Toshma tried to bring a raya from that same Mishnah. The Mishnah over there says that kaitzitz adam. Yeah, I mean no. I mean Rashi makes it sound like that this foam in the barrel has mikta shmarim, a kaifin lamala. It has like these sediments. Yeah. It's obviously something different, right? It's not the same type of thing, obviously, because you take off. Well,
and that stuff needs to be nicer as well because they probably give the animals for feeding.
Perhaps not more than once.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, I'm saying this. Put it this way: it's definitely part of the process, and the question is, which part is the one that makes it finished? And
I'm saying if you give that stuff to animals, it's five and nicer.
no, because it was before. Well, now at this point, if it's not mechuyev ma'aseh yet, you could eat, and you don't have to separate ma'aseh. That's the whole halacha.
Ultimately, they take that scum off. They want to feed it to the animals. Five and nicer.
You have to know if that's boyin ke'echad. Meaning, if you're eating up until that's done, there's no chiv ma'aseh. You could be eating. Right. Yeah, it's a good question. But saying al kapanim, it sounds like that up until that point, that there's no chiv in.
He's talking about what he removes.
Yeah.
You have the leftover grass and you give it to the behind you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's sediment. It's just
Yeah.
melon. Yeah. Right. Yeah, you have to know. So the Mishnah says over there, kaitzitz adam. A person can make up beforehand that he wants to take money and in lieu of the produce. He doesn't want to eat. So a person could do that al di atzmai, because himself he said, "Look, buddy, you hiring me to do a job. I'm going to be eating all day. Instead of giving me money, instead of giving me food, I'll take money." So a person could do that for himself. He could do the same thing for his adult children. He could do it for his adult slaves and maidservants. For the Ishta, he could do it if his wife is working somewhere. The reason because they have intelligence, they know what he's doing with the employer, and they're moichel, they pardon, and they say, okay, you know what, we'll take money instead of the food. But he cannot do this, not for his minor children, not for his minor slaves, not for his animal that's doing work. He can't tell the employer, hey, my animal usually gets to eat, muzzle him, and give me money instead. He cannot do it. And the reason is because all these characters, they don't have intelligence. Says the Gemara, you would think to say, that we're talking about where the owner, the father, whatever you want to call him, he feeds the children, he feeds the slaves, he feeds the animal, and therefore the wages of their work goes to him. Okay, if that's the case, then if you're going to say Mishal Shemaim O'echel, then when the worker eats is a gift from heaven, Mishum Hachi in a kaitzis. So that's why we're saying that even for his minor slaves, where he cannot eat from, because a minor worker doesn't have any rights. It's only when it goes into his mouth because it's from Shemaim that the gift is coming to him. So that's why I can understand that the father, the master, whatever you want to call him, cannot have the rights to say, don't give him the food and give me the money instead. But if you say that it's like considered an additional part of the wages, so the question is, why could the father, the master, not be kaites to make this up beforehand? Just like their wages are his, their eating is also his. So but children, he should be allowed to make this up beforehand. Obviously, you see that Mishal Shemaim Oichel. Says no, we're talking over here that he's not feeding them, and therefore the wages are not his. So the assumption of the Gemara is that the master cannot tell a slave that you can work for me, I'm not going to feed you, which the Machlik is in Gittin Daf Yud Beis Alf. And regarding his animal, because negative prohibition of the Torah of muzzling, because even himself is not allowed to thresh with his animal on his own threshing, he's not allowed to muzzle it. So that's the case. Gudel Nami, as Taisa explains, if you say that he's feeding them and it's Mishal Shemayim, so it makes sense that you could make this up before him with, let's say, his adult children, because since he's feeding them, so they're Moichel B'Leiv Shalom. But if you say he's not feeding them, so why could he make this up for a Gedolim? But they're not really willing, because he doesn't feed them. Okay, maybe they're afraid of the father, but they're anusim, that shouldn't be valid. The Gemara says no. Gedolim yadi become achli. Adults, they know, and even though they're not getting fed, they're still Moichel B'Leiv Shalom, and therefore that's why it's going to work by adults. But again, it's no raya if Mishal Shemayim Mishaloi Huoichel. When it says, okay, but Vatan Reb Hoisher taught a brisa, kaitis adam adei atzma. A person can make this up. Let's say he wants to get money in lieu of the food for himself or the ishtar for his wife, but not for his animal, because again, the Torah says you're not allowed to muzzle an animal. But he could also do this for his adult children, not for his minor children. Now, but kaitis, he could make this up for his non-Jewish male or female servants, whether they're adults or whether they're minors. Now we have a contradiction between these two teachings of avodim ketanim on avodim ketanim. Are you allowed to do this for you minor slaves or not? Says my love. Isn't the resolution like this? The Mishnah and the Brayis are both talking about b'malam zaynis when you're feeding them. What's the machlekes? The Mars of the time the Brayis held mishalahu oichel, that the worker, when he eats, is from his own wages, and therefore the master could make this ketzitza. He can make this up because he gets the wages, and therefore he can make this up. I don't want him to get the food, I want to get the money instead. Marsav, at the time that the Mishnah held, no, Mishal Shemaim Oichel. The worker, the servant, is eating from heaven. So therefore the master has no rights in his eating, and even it's not even theirs until they put it into their mouth. Isn't that the resolution? Isn't this the machlekes of Tanoim? Says, well, not necessarily. You could say that everyone holds Mishalahu Oichel, that he eats from his own. V'loi kasha, and it's still not a difficulty, because the Mishnah is talking about b'she'ein ma'alem mezainis. When you're not giving them, you're not feeding them, so then you have no rights to it, so you can't make that up. U'brais ma'alem mezainis, the rest of them, well, you are feeding them, you do have the rights, and therefore it's going to go to you. So says, wait a second. B'maya kimta, how are you explaining this brisa? You tell me it's b'malem mezainis, when he's feeding them, and since he's feeding them, he has a right to make this ketzitza beforehand, that he's going to get the money instead of they're eating it. But if that's the case, then ketanim, then his minor children, his sons and daughters, he should also be able to make up this beforehand, and not only by the avadim ketanim. You explained to me how this brisa disagrees with the other teaching of avadim ketanim, but then it should be b'nai uben b'nai ubas ketanim also. Says Gemara, no tzarayu de b'nai bita ketanim, the pain of his young children, so even though, which Taisus on the bottom Taisus says, Lav Dafka, the word Rahmana, it's the whole halacha that the father gets from his children is only rabbinic anyway. It just means, in other words, Rabbana, we're not mazakat him when it's going to be a pain for them, that they're working and that they're not going to be able to eat when they're working.
Like the wife or the kids, they're adults, they could agree to it. Therefore, that could be.
No, but the father, when he feeds them, he has the rights to their wages. So if that's the case, he should be allowed to say, instead of they're eating, because Mishaloi, we're saying Mishaloi Oichel. It's Mishaloi. It's Mishaloi Oichel, which means their wages. He gets their wages. So he should be allowed to say, don't give them the food, give me the monetary rights. What?
What about the tzar of the individual that does the work?
That's what we're saying. We're talking about that's the Gemara's answer.
You could say the agodl could agree to that tzar.
Yeah.
Minor cannot. So it's not because.
But that's the Gemara's answer. But we don't need their mechila. He should get it anyway. So they're saying that no, the rabbis didn't give him that right when it's going to cause the children pain. But the Gemara says, wait, we're not done. Because my Kimpel Masnin, how you explain the Mishnah? You told me the Mishnah says that the father cannot do this, is when he's not feeding them. And the truth is, Mishalehu Oichel, even though it's really that it's the wages, but because he's not feeding the servants, so we're saying Lo Yakut, so he's not allowed to go ahead and make this up beforehand and say, hey, don't give them the food, give me the money in lieu. It says, wait a second. That works as we continue to have a Sadi Gimel. This makes sense according to the one who holds, which the Machlekes Masechet is Gittin, that that the master cannot tell the servant that work for me, I'm not going to feed you. Shabbat, that makes sense. Since he's not feeding him, he has no rights to take away what he's earning. But according to the one who says that the master could say to the slave, you're going to work for me because I own you, and I'm not going to feed you. Michael, what are you going to say? He should have the rights to make this ketzitza, even though he's not feeding them. So the Gemara falls off and says, you're right. Both are talking about the Mishnah and the Brisa where he's not feeding them. And according to everyone, it's Mishalehu Oichel, it's part of the wages. What's the Machlekes? The Mars of the Tan, the Brisa hold Yachel, that this Machlekes of Masechtas Gittin is exactly the Machlekes. The Tan, the Brisa holds that he could say Aseimi vein Nizanach. But the Tana of the Mishnah held he can't, and therefore he's not feeding him, therefore he cannot make this up. But then it says, wait a second. Rabbi Yechon is quoted throughout Shas that holds Yachel Rav, that the master could say, Aseimi bein nizanach, so Shavik Masini Bavik Brisa, based on how you just interpreted Machlekes Mishnah Brisa, he's leaving a Mishnah and doing like a Brisa, because you're telling me the Brisa is the one who holds like that. So rather says, okay, we fall off of that too. The Kula Amad, according to everyone, Mishal Shemaim Oichel is actually eating from heaven. And therefore, even if the master is feeding him a zaynis, v'loy matzikatzes, he cannot go ahead and make this up for the minors, because you have no rights. It's even if you have all the rights to him, it's Shemaim giving it to the son. My now how do we translate what Rabbi said in the Brisa that you can do this ketzitza? That just means mezainis. That just means to say that he tells the employer, give them food beforehand, that they don't eat from the work that they're doing from the grapes itself. So says the Gemara, then wait a second, the Kava say Gabe Behemte. Then what? Then the equivalent should be regarding his animal. Why over there is it Aser Tevin Akatzla? You should be allowed to make up to give him straw beforehand, because we taught in the Brisa on Daf Tzadigim and Beis that the Balabais employee is allowed to just open up straw that he doesn't eat as he's working. So why would you not say the same thing for the animal? So the Gemara falls off that. And Ella, the last thing the Gemara says, what we're disagreeing about is like this: the Marsa, the Tana, the Brisa held Mishaloyu Eichel, that the worker's eating is part of his wages, which according to Rabbi Yechon would be. Now, whether the master is feeding him or whether he's not feeding him, it doesn't make a difference. He could say, Aseimi ben Nizanach, which is the one who disagrees with him would hold it's Talmud specific when he is feeding him. So that's where we're saying that, yeah, you could go ahead and take it because of Mishalohi Oichel. But Marsa, the Tana of the Mishnah held, Mishal Shemaim Oichel is eating from heaven. Therefore, even if you're feeding him, you're still not allowed to go ahead and be Matzi Kayitz because, again, it's a gift that's coming from Shemaim and therefore you would have no rights. Thank you to any time, Hosias.